A 2-year-old girl points to a retired police officer in a courtroom. Her revelation brings the judge to his knees, weeping. Hidden secrets come to light, their lives irrevocably altered in unimaginable ways, a story of redemption, justice, and bonds that transcend the world. Prepare yourselves, for this narrative will deeply touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment from where you are watching. Silence filled the room as Gabriella entered through the courtroom doors. With hesitant steps and a light blue dress, the little girl walked hand in hand with Donna Antonia, her grandmother, a woman with graying hair and a face etched with years and worries. Everyone present observed her. How could such a small child be involved in such a complex case? Some murmured, others simply watched curiously. Judge Patricio Herrera, a man respected for his impartiality and firmness, followed the little girl with his gaze. In a corner of the room, Tomas Ortega sat, his eyes fixed on the floor. He was a corpulent man, with a few strands of silver at his temples, contrasting with his dark hair. His large, calloused hands rested on his knees. He wore a grey suit that seemed to discomfort him, as if he wasn't used to formal wear. "Please, have a seat," Judge Herrera indicated with a calm yet firm voice. "Let's proceed with case number 2478, concerning the custody dispute of the minor Gabriela Suarez." The tension in the room was palpable. Prosecutor Natalia Vega, a woman with a piercing gaze and firm posture, rose to present her arguments. "Your Honor, this case is not merely about custody. There are indications of exceptional circumstances that demand our full attention." On the other side of the room, the defense attorney, a thin man named Eduardo Mendez, showed unease, as if he sensed something was amiss. Donna Antonia squeezed Gabriella's small hand as the girl observed the room with curious eyes. Despite her young age, she seemed to understand that something important was happening. Her large brown eyes captured everything, occasionally pausing on faces that seemed familiar. "I would like to call Donna Antonia Suarez, the maternal grandmother of the minor, to testify," requested Prosecutor Vega. The judge agreed, and Donna Antonia rose, not before seating Gabriella next to a social worker assigned to accompany the girl during the proceedings. "Donna Antonia, please explain to the court the circumstances under which you have been caring for your granddaughter," the prosecutor requested. The older woman adjusted her glasses and with a slightly trembling voice began her account. "My daughter Laura and her husband died in an accident. Since then, I have cared for my granddaughter Gabriela with all my love. But a few months ago, I received a visit from this gentleman," she said, pointing to Tomas Ortega, "who claims to be my granddaughter's real father and demands her custody." A murmur went through the room. Tomas Ortega looked up, his eyes showing a mixture of determination and pain. "And do you believe this claim?" asked the prosecutor. "No, ma'am. My daughter never mentioned this man. Gabriela's father was Roberto, my son-in-law, who loved her deeply." The defense attorney immediately rose. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is making assumptions about the feelings of deceased individuals." "Sustained," replied the judge. "Donna Antonia, please limit yourself to the facts you know directly." Donna Antonia agreed, pressing her lips together. "I'm sorry, Your Honor. What I know is that this man appeared out of nowhere, saying impossible things, and now wants to take my granddaughter." Prosecutor Vega continued her questioning, delving into the details of Gabriela's life since her parents' death, the stability she had found with her grandmother, and the sudden appearance of Tomas Ortega in their lives. Meanwhile, Gabriela had begun to fidget in her seat. Her eyes kept looking around, as if searching for something or someone. The social worker tried to calm her, but the girl seemed increasingly agitated. When it was the defense attorney's turn to question Donna Antonia, his approach changed completely. "Donna Antonia, is it true that your daughter Laura worked as a nurse at the regional hospital in the years prior to her marriage?" "Yes, that's correct," the woman replied with some confusion. "And did you know that during that period, your daughter maintained a relationship with my client, Mr. Ortega, who at the time worked as a police officer?" Donna Antonia seemed surprised. "No, that's not possible. My daughter never—" "Mrs. Suarez," interrupted the lawyer, "we have statements from former colleagues at the hospital that confirm this relationship. We also have evidence that Mr. Ortega and your daughter met regularly for at least a year." Donna Antonia's face reflected disbelief and confusion, but she never told me about him. "Is it possible that your daughter didn't tell you every aspect of her private life?" Donna Antonia fell silent for a moment. "I suppose so," she finally admitted. At that moment, Gabriella managed to free herself from the social worker and began to walk around the room. Everyone looked at her, some with tenderness, others with concern about the interruption this might cause to the proceedings. "Please restrain the minor," the judge requested with a firm but gentle voice. However, before anyone could reach her, Gabriella walked directly to where Tomás Ortega was sitting. She stopped in front of him, raised her small hand, and pointed directly at him. "Pa!" the girl said, with a clarity surprising for her age. The entire room fell into absolute silence. Tomás Ortega, the tough ex-police officer, seemed to crumble at that moment. His eyes filled with tears as he looked at the little girl. "Gabriella," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The girl, as if recognizing not only the face but also the voice, smiled broadly and repeated with more enthusiasm, "Papa!" Donna Antonia watched the scene with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she was witnessing. How could Gabriella recognize this man if, according to what she knew, she had never seen him before? Judge Herrera, visibly affected by the scene, requested an immediate recess. "We will have a 30-minute break. Please, let the social worker and the legal representatives of both parties meet in my office immediately." As the room began to empty, Gabriella remained in front of Tomás, who didn't dare touch her, but looked at her with a mixture of love and pain that would move even the hardest heart. Donna Antonia slowly approached, observing the scene with new eyes. There was something in the way Gabriella looked at Tomás, something in the evident connection between them that began to sow doubts in her heart. "Mr. Ortega," she finally said, her voice softer than it had been until then, "I believe we both have much to discuss." Tomás looked up at her, nodding slowly as a tear rolled down his cheek. "Yes, ma'am. There are many things you need to know." In the judge's office, the tension was palpable. Prosecutor Vega rearranged her notes, visibly disturbed by the unexpected turn of events. The defense attorney seemed more confident, but equally surprised by the girl's reaction. "I want to understand exactly what is happening here," began Judge Herrera, addressing the two lawyers. "How is it possible that this girl recognizes a man she supposedly has never seen?" The social worker, a woman named Isabel Delgado, intervened in a professional tone. "Your Honor, young children can react in unpredictable ways. We cannot base legal decisions on the behavior of such a young child." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your point, Mrs. Delgado. However, we cannot ignore what just happened. There is something in this story that we are not seeing." Meanwhile, outside the office, in a quiet corner of the courthouse corridor, Donna Antonia and Tomás Ortega held a conversation that would change their lives forever. "My Laura never told me about you," began Donna Antonia, her voice mixing confusion and reproach. Tomás nodded, understanding. "Laura and I met when she treated an injury I suffered on duty. We fell in love quickly, but our relationship was complicated." "Complicated in what sense?" "I was working on a very dangerous case, undercover in a criminal organization. It was too risky for her to be publicly associated with me." Tomás paused, the pain evident on his face. "I asked her to keep our relationship secret, even from her family. It was a mistake on my part, but I believed I was protecting her." Donna Antonia processed this information with difficulty, trying to reconcile it with what she believed she knew about her daughter's life. "And Gabriella?" she finally asked. "When Laura told me she was pregnant, I was at the height of my infiltration. I couldn't leave without jeopardizing the operation and many lives. I promised that as soon as it was over, we would be together as a family." His voice cracked. "But she met Roberto during that time. When I finally could contact her again, she told me she had decided to move on with her life, that Roberto offered her stability and security, something I couldn't guarantee. And you simply let her go?" Donna Antonia's voice showed disbelief. Tomás shook his head. "No, it wasn't like that. We discussed it a lot, but I finally understood that I couldn't force her to wait indefinitely. My work consumed me, and she deserved more." He paused before continuing. "However, we made an agreement. Roberto never knew he wasn't the biological father, but Laura allowed me to see Gabriella occasionally, always discreetly." Donna Antonia's eyes widened in surprise. "You've been seeing my granddaughter all this time?" "Only until she turned 1. Then the accident happened." Tomás couldn't continue, shaken by emotion. Donna Antonia then remembered Laura's occasional outings with Gabriella, The vague explanations about visits to friends or medical appointments. Were those the moments when she took the girl to see her real father? Why wait so long to claim her? She asked, her voice softer now. After the accident, I was devastated. Besides, I was in the middle of an important case that I couldn't abandon without jeopardizing years of work. When I finally managed to solve it and retire, my first thought was Gabriela. His eyes met Donna Antonia's. I don't want to take your granddaughter, ma'am. I just want to be a part of her life as her father. At that moment, the door to the judge's office opened, and everyone was called back to the courtroom. The hearing was about to resume, but something fundamental had changed in the dynamics between the parties. When everyone returned to their places, Gabriela ran back to Tomas, this time with a doll she had been holding. She offered it with an innocent smile, a gesture that moved everyone present. Judge Herrera observed the scene, also noticing the change in Donna Antonia's attitude, who no longer looked at Tomas with hostility, but with a mixture of resignation and curiosity. Before we proceed, began the judge, I would like to know if any of the parties have anything to add. Prosecutor Vega looked at Donna Antonia, who nodded slightly. Your Honor, said the prosecutor, my client would like to speak. Donna Antonia stood up, her posture more relaxed than before. Your Honor, I had a conversation with Mr. Ortega that made me reconsider my position. I believe he may be telling the truth about his relationship with my daughter and about his paternity. A murmur of surprise went through the room. Judge Herrera looked directly at Donna Antonia, assessing the sincerity of her words. Are you saying you no longer oppose Mr. Ortega having rights over the minor? I'm saying that if he is truly Gabriela's father, as it seems to be the case, he deserves to be part of her life. But my granddaughter has lived with me since she lost her parents, and taking her completely away from my home would be traumatic for her. Judge Herrera nodded, understanding, and then looked at Tomas. Mr. Ortega, do you wish to respond to this? Tomas rose slowly, his gaze alternating between the judge and Gabriela, who continued near him, playing with her doll. Your Honor, it was never my intention to separate Gabriela from her grandmother. I just want the opportunity to be the father I couldn't be until now. I am willing to reach an agreement that is beneficial for everyone, especially for my daughter. The judge seemed satisfied with these statements. In view of this unexpected development, I propose that we conduct a DNA test to confirm paternity, and in the meantime, prepare a provisional plan that allows Mr. Ortega to begin establishing a relationship with the minor under the supervision of Donna Antonia and social services. Both parties agreed. While the details were discussed, Gabriela continued to play cheerfully, oblivious to the importance of the moment, but somehow being the force that had brought about this change of course. When the session finally ended, and as everyone gathered their belongings to leave, Judge Herrera observed little Gabriela, who was now sitting comfortably in Tomas's lap, while Donna Antonia watched them with a calmer expression. At that moment, something strange happened. The girl looked directly at the judge and said something no one expected. Mommy, look at the sky. Judge Herrera stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the little girl. Something in those simple words seemed to pierce him to the depths of his being. No one else in the room seemed to notice the judge's reaction, except perhaps Tomas, whose years of experience as a police officer had taught him to detect the subtlest human expressions. What was it in those childish words that caused such an impact on the respected judge? The answer to that question would change the course of everything to come, although none of those present could imagine it yet. Judge Patricio Herrera remained in his office long after everyone had left the courthouse. Little Gabriela's words echoed in his mind repeatedly. Mommy, look at the sky. A simple, childish phrase that shouldn't mean anything special. And yet, he took an old photograph from his wallet, worn by time and by having been held countless times between his fingers. In it, a young woman with a radiant smile held a small child in her arms. On the back, written in delicate handwriting, Elena and Lucia, looking at the sky. The judge put away the photograph and ran a hand through his tired face. Was it possible that Gabriela's words were a coincidence, or was there something more, something that his rational mind refused to consider? Meanwhile, Tomas Ortega drove to his apartment with a mixture of conflicting emotions. It had been an intense day, full of revelations and changes. As agreed, he would have his first supervised visit with Gabriela the following day. The idea of spending time with his daughter filled him with a joy he hadn't felt in a long time. Upon arriving home, he went directly to the closet in his bedroom. From a hidden box at the back, he took out a small album. He opened it delicately, turning the pages until he found what he was looking for. A photograph of Laura holding a newborn Gabriella, and next to them, himself, smiling with a pride and happiness that now seemed to him from another life. "Laura," he whispered to the silence of his room, "I will take care of our daughter. I promise." In turn, Donna Antonia prepared Gabriella for bed, her mind still processing everything that had happened in court. As she brushed her granddaughter's long brown hair, she observed every detail of her face. How had she not noticed before? Gabriella's eyes, which she had always attributed to her father Roberto, actually had the same shade and shape as Tomas Ortega's. "Grandma, is Daddy coming tomorrow?" Gabriella asked innocently as she snuggled into bed. "Yes, my love. Mr. Tomas will come to see you tomorrow," Donna Antonia replied, still not used to the idea that that stranger was really her granddaughter's father. "Daddy!" the girl exclaimed enthusiastically, hugging her favorite doll to her chest. Donna Antonia kissed her granddaughter's forehead and turned off the light, leaving only a small bedside lamp on. As she watched the little girl fall asleep, she couldn't help but wonder how much Gabriella really remembered. Was it possible that at her tender age, she had memories of Tomas from when she was even younger, or was there something more, some connection that transcended the explainable? The next morning, the day dawned clear and bright. Tomas arrived punctually at Donna Antonia's house, visibly nervous but determined. He brought with him a small stuffed bear, a simple gift, but chosen with affection. Isabel Delgado, the social worker, was already there to supervise the meeting. "Good morning, Mr. Ortega," she greeted professionally. "Remember that this first visit is mainly to establish initial contact. We don't expect the girl to adapt completely immediately." Tomas nodded, grateful for the instructions, but eager to see his daughter. When Gabriella appeared in the room, dressed in a beautiful yellow dress, his face immediately lit up upon seeing Tomas. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, running to him without hesitation. The naturalness with which Gabriella accepted Tomas surprised both Isabel and Donna Antonia. It wasn't the expected behavior of a child with a stranger, but the reunion with someone familiar and beloved. Tomas knelt down to Gabriella's height and offered her the stuffed bear. "I brought a little friend for you," he said softly. The girl took the bear with satisfaction, examining it with childish curiosity before hugging it. "Thank you, Daddy," she replied, pronouncing each word with surprising clarity for her age. The morning passed surprisingly calmly. Tomas played with Gabriella in the garden, read stories to her, and listened attentively to her babbles and incomplete stories. To any observer, they would seem like a father and daughter who had always been together, not separated by tragic circumstances. During a moment when Gabriella was distracted playing with her new bear, Isabel approached Tomas. "I must admit I'm impressed, Mr. Ortega. The connection between you is undeniable." "She reminds me," Tomas replied with restrained emotion. "Somehow, despite all the time that has passed, she reminds me." While observing the interaction from a prudent distance, Donna Antonia felt conflicting emotions. On the one hand, the pain of considering that her son-in-law Roberto was not Gabriella's biological father, and that her daughter Laura had hidden something so important from her. On the other hand, the connection between Tomas and the girl was undeniable, a bond that seemed to benefit his granddaughter. At the moment of Tomas's departure, Gabriella didn't want to say goodbye, clinging to his leg, her eyes brimming with tears. "Daddy, don't go," she pleaded. Tomas knelt down again, his heart torn by the little girl's anguish. "I'll be back tomorrow, Princess. I promise." "Promise?" she asked, offering her pinky finger to seal the agreement. "Promise," Tomas confirmed, linking his pinky finger to his daughter's tiny one. After Tomas left, Gabriella remained unusually calm, hugging her new teddy bear and occasionally glancing towards the door. Donna Antonia tried to distract her, but the girl seemed lost in thought, something extraordinary for her age. That night, while Donna Antonia was preparing Gabriella for bed, the girl said something that petrified her. "Mommy said Daddy would come." Donna Antonia froze, her hand suspended in the air, about to caress her granddaughter's hair. "What did you say, my love?" "Mommy said in heaven. She said Daddy would come," Gabriella repeated naturally, as if commenting on something trivial. A shiver ran down Donna Antonia's spine. Was Gabriela repeating something she had overheard, or was there something more to her words, something that defied logic and reason? Meanwhile, Judge Herrera was reviewing documents in his study. Although he had other pending matters, he couldn't take his mind off Gabriela's case. Something about that girl, in her seemingly innocent words, had deeply moved him. His wife Maria entered with a cup of tea. "Patricio, it's late. You should rest." The judge looked up. "I know, but this case, there's something that doesn't leave me at peace." Maria, knowing her husband, sat down beside him. "Is it about Lucia?" The name resonated like a spectre. His daughter, missing for years in never clarified circumstances. The case that had shattered his life and that somehow had led him to become a judge, seeking justice he never found for his family. "I don't know," he replied sincerely. "Maybe I'm seeing connections where there aren't any. But that girl, Gabriela, has a wisdom that surpasses her age." Maria took his hand tenderly. "Patricio, you can't keep looking for Lucia in every girl who appears in your court." "I know," he admitted, "but this time it's different, I assure you." The following morning brought unexpected news. The preliminary results of the DNA test arrived with unusual speed, confirming without a doubt that Tomás Ortega was Gabriela's biological father. With this confirmation, the case took a new legal direction. At the same time, the relationship between Tomás and Gabriela strengthened with each encounter. The girl eagerly awaited his daily arrival, and their goodbyes became increasingly difficult. Doña Antonia, while processing the revelation about her granddaughter's paternity, began to accept Tomás's presence in their lives. One day, while Tomás was playing with Gabriela in the garden, the girl said something disconcerting. "Daddy, do you know the judge?" Tomás looked at her curiously. "Judge Herrera? I only know him from the court, Princess." Gabriela shook her head, frustrated at not being able to express herself. "No, Daddy, the judge. He's looking." "Looking? What is he looking for, Gabriela?" "For his little girl," she replied simply, returning to her game as if she hadn't said anything unusual. Tomás remained pondering his daughter's words, not fully understanding their meaning, but feeling that there was something important in them. He decided not to comment, keeping the strange conversation in his memory. That afternoon, he received an unexpected call. It was Judge Herrera, requesting a private meeting in his office the following day. The formality of the request outside the court context seemed unusual, but Tomás accepted without hesitation. Arriving at the judge's office, he found Patricio Herrera facing the window, contemplating the city. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Ortega," said the judge, indicating that he should sit down. "Is something wrong with the case, Judge?" Tomás asked, direct as usual. "Not exactly," Herrera replied, sitting down. "I wanted to talk about something personal." Tomás waited, intrigued by the turn of the conversation. "Mr. Ortega, you were a police officer for many years, right?" "Yes, sir. 20 years. Mostly in criminal investigations." The judge nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. "I've reviewed your file. Your work was impeccable, with many decorations. You specialized in complex cases." "That's right," Tomás confirmed, not understanding where the conversation was going. Judge Herrera opened a drawer and took out a folder, sliding it towards Tomás. "Do you recognize this case?" Tomás opened the folder and felt the air leave his lungs. "The Lucia Herrera case," he read aloud. He looked at the judge, finally understanding. "It was your daughter." The judge nodded, the pain visible in his eyes despite the time that had passed. "She disappeared a long time ago. The case was never officially solved." "I remember," Tomás admitted. "I wasn't directly involved, but I followed the case. It was devastating for everyone in the force." "Mr. Ortega, I haven't called you to relive old wounds," said the judge, his voice firmer. "I've called you because I believe that your daughter, Gabriela, might have some connection with my Lucia." Tomás frowned, confused. "I don't understand, Judge." "The words she said in court, 'Mommy, heaven, look.' Those were the last words my wife and I heard from Lucia before her disappearance. We were in the park. She pointed to the sky and said, 'Mommy, heaven, look.' Then," the judge paused, fighting back emotion. "Then we got distracted, and when we looked, she had disappeared." Tomás felt a shiver. "It could be a coincidence, Judge." "That's what I thought, until my assistant informed me that Gabriela has asked about a lost girl. Has she mentioned anything similar to you?" Tomas remembered Gabriella's words in the garden. She told me that you were looking for your little girl. I didn't give it any importance. Judge Herrera leaned forward. Mr. Ortega, I know what I'm about to propose may sound crazy, but I need your help. I want you to find out if Gabriella knows anything else about Lucia. I don't know how or why, but I believe that somehow this girl could be the key to finding answers I've been searching for years. Tomas looked at the judge, evaluating his request. As a former police officer, his instinct told him there was something more, something he didn't yet see clearly, and if there was the slightest possibility that Gabriella could help solve an unsolved case, didn't he have an obligation to try? Okay, Judge, he finally said. I'll see what I can find out. But you must understand that Gabriella is very young. What she says might not make sense or be just a product of her imagination. I understand perfectly, the judge assured him. I just ask that you pay attention and let me know anything relevant. Leaving the judge's office, a feeling of unease settled in his chest. What was he getting himself into? And most importantly, how would he protect Gabriella in the middle of all this? That afternoon, during his visit, Tomas observed his daughter with new eyes. She played like any child, but sometimes she seemed to become absorbed in thoughts too profound for someone so young. Gabriella, he began casually as they built a tower, do you remember what you told me about the judge and his little girl? The little girl nodded, concentrating on placing a block. The lost girl. Do you know anything about her? About where she might be? Gabriella stopped playing and looked at her father with a seriousness unbefitting her age. In the water, Daddy. The girl is in the water. Tomas felt his heart accelerate. What water, Princess? A river? The sea? Dark water? Cold? Gabriella gestured with her small hands as if describing something deep. Sleeping. Doña Antonia, watching from the kitchen, approached worriedly. What are you talking about? Tomas hesitated, not knowing how much to reveal. We were just playing, right, Gabriella? But the girl shook her head, looking at her grandmother. Grandma, the lost girl needs to go home. Doña Antonia and Tomas exchanged worried glances. There was something disturbing about the way Gabriella spoke, as if she had knowledge of something she shouldn't know. I think that's enough for today, said Doña Antonia, taking Gabriella in her arms. It's time for her snack. As the grandmother took the girl away, Tomas remained thoughtful. Dark and cold water, he murmured. The details of the Lucia Herrera case returned to his mind. The girl had disappeared from a park near a lake that was never completely dredged during the initial investigation. With trembling hands, he took out his phone and dialed Judge Herrera's number. Judge, he said as soon as he answered, I think we need to talk about Mirador Lake. On the other end of the line, the judge's silence was more eloquent than any words. Fog covered Mirador Lake that early morning, creating an almost unreal atmosphere. The water, dark and still, seemed to hold secrets in its depths. On the shore, a group of professional divers prepared for the dive, meticulously checking their equipment. Tomas Ortega stood beside Judge Patricio Herrera. Both maintained a tense silence, each immersed in their thoughts and fears. Are you sure about this? Tomas finally asked, watching as the first rays of sun began to break through the fog. The judge nodded slowly. I've waited too long for answers. If there's the slightest possibility that... He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Tomas perfectly understood the pain and hope that were mixed in Judge Herrera's heart. As a father, he could now understand how devastating it must have been to lose a daughter without knowing what had happened to her. The divers will focus on the north area of the lake, the officer in charge explained, approaching. It's the deepest area and was never fully explored during the initial investigation. Why not? Tomas asked, his police instinct activating immediately. Technical limitations at the time, the officer replied. And after 3 weeks without results, the search in the lake was suspended to concentrate resources on other lines of investigation. Judge Herrera closed his eyes for a moment, as if the weight of those memories was almost unbearable. I always knew we hadn't searched enough. As the divers entered the water, Tomas couldn't stop thinking about Gabriella. How was it possible that his little daughter knew about this place? Dark water. Cold. Gabriella's words resonated in his mind. If it turned out she was right, how could he explain that a girl her age had knowledge of something that happened long before she was born? Judge, Tomas began, carefully choosing his words, if Gabriella was right about this place, how do you think that's possible? Patricio Herrera kept his gaze fixed on the lake. I don't know, Tomas. There are things in this world that escape our understanding. But if there's something I've learned in my years as a judge, it's that the truth always finds its way to the light, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. The wait was interminable. Minutes turned into hours as the divers methodically explored the depths of the lake. Every time one emerged, both men held their breath, awaiting news that could change their lives forever. Finally, around midday, there was commotion in the water. Several divers gathered at one point, and then one of them swam quickly to the shore. "We found something," the diver announced, taking off his mask. "A submerged vehicle." Judge Herrera stepped forward, stumbling slightly. "A vehicle? What kind of vehicle?" "It seems to be a van. It's been there a long time. It's partially covered in mud and vegetation." The rescue teams mobilized quickly. With special cranes, they began the delicate operation of extracting the vehicle from the bottom of the lake. The tension was palpable as everyone watched as an old grey van covered in mud and algae slowly emerged from the water, a silent testament to the years spent in the depths. When the van was finally on dry land, the forensic technicians approached. Carefully, they opened the rusty doors. The interior was in an advanced state of deterioration, but some details could still be distinguished. "Sir," one of the technicians called to the judge, holding a small object. "We found this in the back seat." In his gloved hands he held a small, colorful bracelet. Judge Herrera recognized it immediately. "It's Lucia's," he said, his voice barely a choked whisper. "We gave it to her on her last birthday." But that wasn't all they found. In the vehicle there were also human remains, 2 bodies according to the forensic experts' first estimates, one in the driver's seat and another in the back seat, much smaller. "We will need to do DNA tests to confirm the identities," the chief forensic expert explained. "But due to the position of the remains and the personal belongings found, it seems that it is an adult and a small child." Judge Herrera slumped into a chair, his face buried in his hands. Years of uncertainty were coming to an end, but not in the way he had wished. Tomas approached and placed a hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. "The vehicle's license plate is registered to Raúl Mendoza," one of the officers reported, checking his tablet. "He was a primary school teacher at the school where Lucia Herrera studied." The judge looked up, surprised. "Mendoza? I remember him. He was among those questioned after Lucia's disappearance, but he had a solid alibi for that day." "Apparently, his alibi wasn't as solid as we thought," Tomas commented, his former police mind working at full speed. "A full investigation will be necessary, but everything points to Mendoza kidnapping Lucia and, for some reason, ending up in the lake." "An accident, perhaps," suggested one of the officers. "The road bordering the lake was much more dangerous before the renovations. There are records of several accidents at that time." Judge Herrera processed this information in silence. After so many years, he finally knew the fate of his daughter. It wasn't the ending he had hoped for, but at least he would have the opportunity to give her a decent burial, to have a place to mourn and remember her. "I must inform my wife," he finally said, taking out his phone. "She has waited for this moment as much as I have." As the judge walked away to make the most difficult call of his life, Tomas remained contemplating the lake. The question that tormented him remained unanswered. How did Gabriela know about this place? How had she been able to describe so precisely where Lucia was located? Back in the city, Doña Antonia watched Gabriela play in the garden. The girl seemed completely normal, laughing and chasing butterflies like any little girl her age. However, Doña Antonia couldn't forget her granddaughter's strange statements about the lost girl. "Gabriela," she called softly, sitting on a bench in the garden. "Come here for a moment, my love." The girl ran over, her cheeks flushed from play and the sun. "Do you remember what you told your dad about the lost girl? About her being in the water?" Gabriela nodded naturally. "Yes, Grandma." "How did you know that, my life? Did someone tell you?" The girl seemed to reflect for a moment, as if searching for the right words to express something complex. "Mommy showed me." Doña Antonia felt a shiver run down her spine. "Your mommy? Do you mean Mommy in heaven?" Gabriela nodded again. "Mommy and the girl. They're together sometimes." Not knowing how to process this information, Doña Antonia hugged her granddaughter tightly. She didn't understand what was happening, but a part of her began to accept that perhaps there were things in this world that went beyond rational understanding. That night, when Tomas returned home to Doña Antonia's to inform her about the discoveries at the lake, he found the older woman sitting alone on the porch with a thoughtful expression. They've found her, haven't they? Doña Antonia asked before Tomas could speak. Tomas nodded, surprised by the question. Yes. How did you know? Gabriela told me this afternoon. She said the lost girl could now go home with her family. A silence laden with meaning settled between them. Finally, Tomas sat down next to Doña Antonia, both contemplating the starry sky. I can't explain it, he confessed. There's no logical way for Gabriela to know about the lake, about Lucia. Maybe we don't need to explain it, Doña Antonia replied with a serenity that surprised Tomas. Some things just are. In the following days, as the investigation into the Lucia Herrera case progressed, confirming that she had indeed been kidnapped by Raúl Mendoza, Tomas and Doña Antonia established a shared custody agreement for Gabriela. The little girl would spend part of the week with her father and part with her grandmother, ensuring that she maintained the stability and love of both parts of her family. A week after the discovery at the lake, Judge Patricio Herrera requested a private meeting with Tomas and Gabriela. The little girl, dressed in a pretty pink dress, entered the judge's office hand in hand with her father. "Thank you for coming," said the judge, smiling kindly at Gabriela. "Especially you, little one." Gabriela smiled shyly, looking around with childish curiosity. Patricio Herrera knelt in front of her, getting down to her level. "Gabriela, do you know who the girl was who was in the water? The lost girl you were talking about?" The little girl nodded. "Your girl, Lucia." The judge took a deep breath, moved by the simplicity and certainty with which Gabriela spoke. "Can you tell me how you knew about her? How did you know where she was?" Gabriela looked towards the window as if seeing something beyond the glass. She wanted to go home. She was sad because you were sad. A tear rolled down the judge's cheek. "And now? Is she okay?" The girl smiled, a smile brimming with a wisdom beyond her years. "She's happy now. She told me not to be sad. She's always with you." Patricio Herrera couldn't contain his emotion. Silent tears streamed down his face as he nodded, thanking Gabriela with a gesture. "There's something else I wanted to communicate," said the judge, composing himself and addressing Tomas. "The investigation into Lucia's case is officially closed, and I've made a personal decision. I'm going to retire." "Retire?" asked Tomas, surprised. "Yes. For years, Lucia's disappearance is what drove me to be a judge, to seek justice for others when I couldn't find it for my own family. But now, thanks to Gabriela, I have peace. It's time to turn the page, to dedicate myself to my wife, to honor my daughter's memory in another way." Tomas nodded understandingly. "What are your retirement plans?" "We're going to create a foundation in Lucia's memory, to assist missing children and their families, and I would—" The judge paused, hesitant. "I would like Gabriela to be a part of it somehow. Not now, of course, she's too young. But perhaps in the future." Tomas looked at his daughter, who was playing carefree with a small toy she had taken from her pocket. It was astonishing to think that this girl, with her innocence and purity, had been the instrument to solve a years-long mystery, to bring serenity to a family devastated by tragedy. "I'm sure Gabriela will be happy to participate in something so important," Tomas replied. "Isn't that right, Princess?" The girl looked up and smiled, agreeing enthusiastically, though probably without fully understanding what was being discussed. Days later, a small funeral was held for Lucia Herrera. The ceremony was intimate, attended by her parents, a few close relatives, and at Judge Herrera's express request, Tomas, Donna Antonia, and Gabriela. As the small coffin descended into the earth, Gabriela, holding her father's hand, looked up at the sky and smiled. "What do you see, my love?" asked Tomas, intrigued by his daughter's expression. "Lucia," she replied simply. "She's with Mommy." They're smiling. Tomas looked where his daughter was pointing, seeing only the blue sky and a few white clouds, but for a moment, just an instant, he felt a sensation of warmth and peace that he couldn't explain. On the way back from the funeral, Donna Antonia broke the meditative silence that had settled in the car. "I think it's time we had a serious conversation about the future, Tomas." He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. "What do you mean?" "Gabriela, naturally, our custody agreement." Tomas tensed. "Have you changed your mind?" "Not exactly," Donna Antonia replied, "but I've been thinking perhaps it would be better for Gabriela to have a stable home, a place she can truly call her own. Not constantly going back and forth between two houses." "I understand," said Tomas, feeling a pang of pain at the thought of seeing his daughter less. "Are you suggesting that Gabriela live permanently with you?" Donna Antonia shook her head, surprising him. Actually, I was thinking that perhaps you should consider buying a larger house, one where there's room for all of us. What? Tomas almost braked sharply. Are you suggesting we live together? You, Gabriela, and me? I know it seems strange, admitted Donna Antonia. But think about it. Gabriela would have both her father and grandmother under the same roof. Stability, continuity. And frankly, I wouldn't mind the company. This house feels very empty sometimes. Tomas pondered the proposal as he drove. It was an unusual idea, but it made sense. And, more importantly, it would be best for Gabriela. We'd have to establish some rules, he finally said, a small smile forming on his face. I'm quite organized, you know. Donna Antonia laughed, the sound filling the car with a lightness that contrasted with the solemnity of the day. So am I, Mr. Ortega. So am I. In the back seat, Gabriela had fallen asleep, oblivious to the conversation that was shaping her future. Her expression was serene, as if even in her dreams she knew she was surrounded by love and protection. A month later, Tomas, Donna Antonia, and Gabriela moved into a spacious house in a quiet residential neighborhood. The adaptation wasn't always easy. There were adjustments and occasional disagreements, but they functioned as a unit, united by their love for Gabriela. Judge Patricio Herrera and his wife Maria became frequent visitors, finding in Gabriela a little girl who, in some inexplicable way, had returned a part of the daughter they had lost, not as a replacement, but as a reminder that love and connection can transcend the barriers we normally consider insurmountable. One Sunday afternoon, while Tomas and Donna Antonia were preparing dinner, Gabriela was playing in the garden. Suddenly, the girl stopped playing and looked up at the sky with a smile. "What do you see, Gabriela?" asked Tomas, watching her from the kitchen window. "Mummy," she replied naturally. "She said we're okay now, we're all okay." Tomas and Donna Antonia exchanged glances, a mixture of astonishment and acceptance on their faces. They didn't fully understand Gabriela's gift, if it truly was a gift and not simply the imagination of a young girl, but they had learned to accept it, to find solace in the possibility that, somehow, Laura was still watching over them. "You know what, Princess?" said Tomas, approaching his daughter and crouching down to her height. "I think you're right. We're all okay now." Little Gabriela smiled, her eyes shining with the innocence of childhood, mixed with a wisdom that seemed to come from far beyond. In that moment, under the warm afternoon sun, the family that had formed in such an unexpected way felt complete, united by bonds that went beyond blood and time, connected by a love that somehow had transcended even the barriers between this world and the next. And as the sun began to set, bathing the garden in a golden light, Tomas knew that no matter what the future held, he would always cherish the day a little girl pointed him out in a courtroom, changing the course of their lives forever.